In this video, we will be discussing the pattern of the CET. Now, CET is conducted by the Directorate of Technical Education (DTE) for admission to the MBA/MMS programs for the colleges in Maharashtra primarily, right? And again, as an outside Maharashtra state candidate, also you can appear for the CET. So we'll try to discuss what is the pattern of the CET, what all question types are there, and how should you tackle the CET in general. Now, in terms of the information about the test, the first information is that it is a computer-based test and it is conducted over 2 slots each across 2 or 3 days, which means that you might have anywhere ranging between 4 to 6 slots in which this test is conducted. Typically, this test is conducted somewhere in the month of March every year, although there are some delays that can be expected in some of the years, which might push the test to say the month of May or even June in some cases. Now, in terms of the marking scheme, there is no negative marking. So you will have each question which will be followed by 5 options, but then even if you get an answer wrong, there will be no negative marking. There will be normalization across slots on the basis of the kind of the performance that you would have shown in a particular slot. So each slot will have its own percentile that would be shown to you at the end of the or whenever the result is out, right? So you are competing against people in your own slot. Now, there could be an issue with the quality of competition that you might have in a particular slot, but then again, it does not really matter broadly because the number of people who take the test is statistically significant, and that's why at the end of it, the normalization would take care of your performance in a particular slot. Now, in terms of the negative marking, because there is no negative marking, you are expected to answer each and every question in that particular test, right? So even if you have no idea about, say, 20 or 30 questions at the end of your 150 minutes, even then it is largely expected to mark some option randomly to these questions purely because at the end of the day, you might end up getting some marks for your random guesses. Now, it's an out-and-out speed-based test, so you have to answer 200 questions or you will be expected to answer a maximum of 200 questions in 150 minutes, which translates into a speed of 45 minutes or 45 seconds per question when it comes to the CET. Now, in terms of the key differences from the CAT, the first bit is there will be a section-wise attempt strategy that need to be formulated before you appear for the test, meaning that there will be 4 sections broadly into which this entire test will be divided. So you will have the logical reasoning or the analytical reasoning section, you will have a visual reasoning section, you will have a quantitative aptitude section and a verbal ability section. So there are these 4 sections into which the entire test is divided, and on the basis of your strengths and your areas of improvement, what you will have to do is you will have to formulate a strategy which allows you to attempt a lot of questions in these 150 minutes that you will have. In terms of the question types that appear specifically in the verbal ability section, you will see grammar-based questions wherein you will have to figure out the correct way of representing a particular sentence or an erroneous part in a given sentence, which will be a part of the grammatically correct / incorrect question types. You will also have some questions based on vocabulary, which might involve finding the synonym, antonym, analogies, or even the correct spelling in many cases. So that is something that will be a part of the vocabulary side of things. Also, there might be some questions on critical reasoning wherein you might be expected to figure out which of the following options will the author agree to the most or disagree to the most, which of the following is an assumption that is implicit in that particular passage, which of the following courses of action will strengthen whatever the author has mentioned, will weaken what the author has mentioned above. So all those question types you can see under critical reasoning. In terms of the verbal reasoning question types, again, these are a very common feature of the CET, wherein you might have questions based on blood relations, directions, syllogisms, sequential output, coding / decoding, alphanumeric series, trying to figure out what exactly will be the next term or the incorrect term in a series, and so on and so forth. So there will be a lot of these verbal reasoning based question types that will be a part of the CET. In terms of the visual reasoning part, this is a section that is unique to the CET. So typically there are 25 questions out of 200 questions that will be from the visual reasoning bit, wherein typically you have to figure out which would be a figure that would continue a sequence of figures, right? So you might have a dash followed by a triangle, followed by a square, followed by a pentagon, followed by a question mark. And you will have to figure out which one will be the element or which one of the given options will continue the series in a logical manner. And then you will have to obviously select the next figure from the given options that would have been given to you, right? So that's basically what visual reasoning looks like. Another type of questions that you might see at visual reasoning are analogy based questions, wherein you will have 2 figures will form or will be analogous to each other, and there will be the third figure will be given to you. You have to figure out what the fourth figure will be to have the same analogical relationship as the one given in the problem statement. You might also have questions that are based on dice, wherein you will be shown a die from various angles and you will be asked which one will be the number which will be opposite to say 1, right? And that's how you will have to figure out. So you'll have to just visualize what the die looks like and then figure out what the answer will be. So all these will be the question types that will be present in terms of the visual reasoning section. Now, in terms of the overall pattern, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 sections broadly into which the test is divided. There are 75 questions typically from the logical reasoning section, 25 questions from abstract reasoning or the visual reasoning bit that I mentioned earlier, 50 questions each from the quantitative aptitude section and the verbal ability and reading comprehension section, bringing the overall number of questions to 200, which have to be attempted in 150 minutes. Now, if you look at it at a section level, in terms of the verbal ability and reading comprehension section, this is again from the latest pattern of the CET that we had. So if you look at the kind of split between reading comprehension and non-RC questions, it was 14 and 36. So there were 3 passages, 400 or 200 words each passage, and the total number of questions across these 3 passages was 14. In terms of the kind of questions that you can get from vocabulary, so synonyms, antonyms, analogies, in terms of spellings, right? So those questions were present in terms of the CET this year. In terms of the grammar-based questions, you had questions which were expecting you to replace the underlined phrase or spot the error in a particular statement. So these were the kind of questions that were there. There were also a few questions on critical reasoning and there was 1 question on critical reasoning rather, and 3 questions that were based on jumbled paragraphs, right? So we had one set here. The way in which the jumbled paragraph questions are different at the CET compared to the other tests is that there is a possibility that you might be given a 6-statement paragraph. You have to rearrange it and the questions will be in the form of which of the following will represent the 3rd sentence in the rearranged paragraph. Which of the following sentences will represent the 1st sentence in the rearranged paragraph? Which of the following would be the last sentence in the rearranged paragraph? So those could be the question types that you get in terms of the jumbled paragraph side of CET. Coming to the next section of quantitative aptitude, typically you have a lot of arithmetic that is present at the quantitative aptitude section at the CET. So even the latest pattern showed that there were 27 questions out of 50. So 54% of the section comprised of arithmetic questions, followed by number theory based questions, which were 10 in number, followed by data sufficiency, geometry and modern math based questions. Now you have to understand here is that data sufficiency is one area that you will have to be particularly good at when it comes to the CET, purely because you might see a lot of questions that expect you to apply a lot of mathematical formulas and concepts from other areas and answer the data sufficiency question. In terms of the 3rd section, which is the logical reasoning section, again you can see the entire ensemble of the question types that can appear at the LR section here. So typically if you look at it, 12 questions were from grouping and conditionalities and 13 questions were from arrangements, which basically meant that the logical reasoning puzzles or the set type of questions comprise some 25 questions out of 75 in one of the slots of this year's CET. Similarly, if you look at the kind of questions that appear at the CET, you will have questions on sequential output, coding, decoding, directions, family tree, in terms of number / alphanumeric series, there were some questions. Cube-based questions were there, wherein you have to figure out as to which will be the number opposite to a particular face. So that can be a question type. Again, in terms of visualizing cubes, again, these kind of questions you might have at the logical reasoning section. Similarly, there were some data sufficiency questions in logical reasoning as well. So on the basis of additional information, you may or may not be able to answer a particular logical reasoning question that would have been part of the question stem when it came to the data sufficiency question type for logical reasoning. So 75 questions in total for this entire section. And in terms of the last section, the visual reasoning section, there were 25 questions this year, out of which 11 were based on series completion. Then there were 6 that were miscellaneous question types, wherein you had to figure out which pairs or which triplets can you make from 9 figures. So let's say there are 9 figures given to you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There would be triplets that would be formed. So there might be 3 images, all of them which have a cross in them. There might be 3 images, all of them will have a darkened portion inside of them. And there will be 3 images, all of them would be in the form of one solid block that will be there, right? So you have to figure out which 3 will be a part of each group. So 1, 5, 8, 2, 3, 4 and 6, 7, 9. So that could be an option wherein you will have these 3 blocks that will be present. So those were categorized under miscellaneous question types at the CET. Also, you had questions that were based on odd man out, which meant that there would be a sequence given to you, and out of the 5 or 6 images that were given to you, all of them would form a sequence except that one which will violate the sequence. So that was another question type that you had at the visual reasoning section. So overall, if you look at it, 200 questions to be attempted in 150 minutes, no negative marking, exam conducted across 4 to 6 slots. And because it's an out and out speed test, you have to ensure that you're attempting as many questions as is possible genuinely. Also, because there is no negative marking, you have to attempt all the questions, even if you are not sure of them, purely to gain some bonus marks, just in case you get lucky. So that is basically what we had in terms of the CET pattern, and what all things should you keep in mind if you are to appear for the CET in the coming season.